Buying rental property is a great way to build wealth, but are you ready to be a landlord? Then you have goals and ambitions, but have you put a plan in place to achieve them? And learn how to buy a franchise to become the business owner you always wanted to be. All this and more today on The Wealthy Life. Are you ready to become a landlord? Joining us today is Hunter Boucher to discuss the pros and cons of being a landlord and how to protect yourself. Hunter, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So what should people know before becoming a landlord?
Well, that's a good question, and it's important to note that it is before becoming a landlord that people really need to focus.
Because after it's too late.
Well, that's exactly the point. So landlords need to be aware that they're entering a business. They're starting a business, and it's a business in a highly regulated field. It doesn't matter really what jurisdiction you're in, what province you're in, what city you're in. It's one that's highly regulated at all levels of government. So it's something that requires a lot of education up front and a lot of information gathering.
So what do you need to educate yourself on? Like there's landlord tenancy rules is the obvious one that comes to mind. Are there other things people need to be aware of?
Certainly. So as you mentioned, there's the Residential Tenancy Act in British Columbia and many others across the country that have a direct impact on the rental housing industry. But local bylaws can also have a really big impact. Things such as how many people are allowed to live in the unit and the types of rental unit you're allowed to have. Parking rules are two really big things, but also things like maintenance and whether or not you need a building permit.
Okay, and you talked about how many people can live in the property, but also whether it's maybe short-term or long-term rental. Does that matter?
It certainly does. So the Residential Tenancy Act is something that applies to long-term housing, so secure long-term housing. Short-term, things like Airbnb or
VRBOs.
Exactly. Those are not covered by the Residential Tenancy Act, and in fact, oftentimes aren't allowed by local bylaws.
Right, so people are maybe doing it anyway, but careful, you don't want to get caught.
It can be costly, certainly.
What are the main obligations of a landlord?
The main obligation of a landlord in any residential tenancy is to provide a safe, secure home for tenants. And that means making sure that the building itself is safe, that the building is kept up to local safety standards, and that they maintain that throughout the entire tenancy. So going in and checking, say, on a regular basis.
Oh, landlords are allowed to do that?
Most certainly. The Residential Tenancy Act allows landlords to enter the property once a month for an inspection. Now, I don't think any landlords are going in once a month. I don't think any tenants I don't think tenants want their landlords to go in once a month either. But they should be checking with their insurance to find out how often they're required to go in to maintain their homeowner's insurance.
Oh, that's a good point too. I think a lot of people may not think of that.
It's a common thing that is missed.
So what rights then do the tenants have that may somehow get in the way of a landlord's protection rights?
I wouldn't say that there's necessarily rights that tenants have that get in the way, but it is certainly a balance. There's rights and responsibilities on both sides of this relationship. And it is very much that. It's a business relationship governed primarily by the Residential Tenancy Act. And that piece of legislation gives rights to tenants on things such as a right to privacy and quiet enjoyment of the rental unit.
So a landlord can't just go barging in there anytime they want.
Exactly.
They'd have to give notice, I assume.
Exactly that.
So what can landlords do to protect themselves?
The biggest thing that landlords can do to protect themselves is to educate themselves. Look for resources for your jurisdiction that provide education on the rental housing industry. as it relates to where you're renting it. So in British Columbia, there's an I Rent It Right course available online. It's a free online course. And it's similar to other kind of self-paced online courses like Serving It Right and Food Safe.
So if a tenant doesn't pay their rent, can the landlord take action?
Yeah, so that's often a primary concern of most rental housing providers, is that my tenant is not going to pay the rent. The Residential Tenancy Act provides guidance and processes for that. A tenant who hasn't paid rent might end up receiving a 10-day notice for unpaid rent, and it's a 10-day notice to end their tenancy. So it's a rather serious and significant step, and it's one of those situations that escalates quickly.
You don't pay, get out.
In reality, it is sometimes as simple as that, but there is enforcement that comes with that. That can take a bit more time.
How important is it to document everything, like with an agreement, a rental agreement?
So rental agreements are the foundation of that business relationship. And as we mentioned before, it is a business relationship. And just like any business relationship, you want to document what both parties expect from each other. And if that isn't a clear and well-written document, it can be problematic. It can make things uncertain as to what is really expected. It'll
protect both parties to ensure a happy, successful relationship.
Exactly.
Any final tips for our viewers today?
The biggest tip that I would say any landlord should take away is educate yourself. Make sure that you understand the landscape that you're entering into, because it is a business, it's an investment, and with it comes lots of rewards, but also potential risk.
Hunter, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Don't go away. Learn how having a financial plan can help you achieve your goals even faster when we return. The term financial plan is commonly used, but do you really know what it is and how it can benefit you? Joining us now is money expert Christine Beasy to highlight the key benefits and components of a solid financial plan that will help you make the most out of what you have to live your best life. And who doesn't want to live their best life, Christine? Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Sybil. It's great to be here.
So what is a financial plan?
In its simplest terms, a financial plan is describing where you are today, where you want to get to, and how you're going to get there.
And what are the benefits of having a financial plan?
Planning just helps us achieve our goals. So, if I want to run a marathon, I'm more likely to get there if I have a plan. So financial plans really help you achieve your goals. And the other great thing about them is it helps you reduce the stress you have around money. Really helps you lower that anxiety.
Money is a common cause of stress for most Canadians. FB Canada recently did a survey, and it showed that financial stress was the top of the stressors for Canadians. Yet having a financial plan and working with a professional greatly reduced that stress. So why do so many people put it off? It's a good thing. You can achieve your goals. You can reduce your stress. What's getting in our way?
It's just not something that we have to do. I think all of our plates are so full, and it doesn't feel like something that has been socially normalized. I think, I used to invest money for wealthy Canadians, and everybody in that segment had a financial plan. It was completely normal. My job was then to execute on that plan. But for the average Canadian, it's not something we've talked about a lot. And then the thing, people think money is boring, but what we like to think of is when you plan your spend and you're aligning that spending with your values, you can actually use it to spark more joy with that spending. Research actually shows that when you spend your money on things that bring you joy, you don't spend as much of it. So, getting that emotional return on your spending is really important. And when you plan for that, it can really make it a little more fun.
People do think money is boring, yet everybody wants more money. So how can it be that boring? But I think the planning component is getting in people's way. But even once you have a plan, it's critically important to execute on the plan, because just knowing what you need to do is only part of the equation. I love the marathon analogy. You want to run a marathon, what would the plan entail? Well, you probably have to start small and you run a short distance and then you run longer and it's over a multi-week period, and eventually you've built up what you needed to build up, the stamina, endurance, and strength to actually complete the marathon. So with money and finances, people need to execute on it, but it's like planning for retirement is 20, 30, 40 years down the road. How do we get excited about saving today for something that's not going to bring us joy until later?
It's not that simple sometimes. And one of the segments that we resonate the most with is actually parents, because I think parents, if they are on track for their finances, they recognize how purposeful they've been in getting there. And if they're off track, they realize the solution would have been a lot easier if they had started young. So I really hope as a society, we socialize and normalize thinking about long-term goals and money much earlier on in our careers and much earlier on in our lives, so that it's easier for us to do. You know, the time is your biggest ally when it comes to your money.
So how can we implement shorter term, more immediate rewards for the right behavior that's going to serve us well over our lifetime?
Yeah, so an activity that I think your viewers might enjoy is that, you know, looking at your spending and finding those subscriptions. Subscriptions don't actually bring us any day-to-day joy. We forget about them. We don't get that reward on that spend. And so if you can sort of curate your subscriptions, go through them, really be proud about the ones that bring you joy. And if there's one that you're like, it's not really serving me anymore, cancel it and give yourself the reward of spending that money on, you know, a beverage of your choice with your friends if you're an extrovert, and if you're an introvert, maybe your favorite book from Indigo.
Oh, what a great idea. So I think even to get to that point, people should review their credit card or bank statements to figure out where is their money going today and be intentional about how they spend. But I love the idea of, I'm going to cut that out. I've just saved $50 a month and I'm going to buy myself a $5 latte as an immediate reward. I'm still ahead $45 every month. That's great advice. Any final tips for our viewers today?
Yeah, I highly encourage all of you to get a financial plan. It's the best way to lower anxiety. It's not as cumbersome as it sounds, and it really makes you feel better about where you're going.
Well, Christine, thank you so much. I think everyone wants to feel really good about their financial situation and live a stress-free life. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. This was lovely.
Stay tuned. Learn the benefits of buying a franchise when we return. Have you ever dreamed of owning your own business but didn't know where to start? With us now is franchise expert Angela Cote to discuss the benefits of buying a franchise versus building your own business. Angela, welcome to the show.
I'm excited to be here. I've watched the show and now I get to be here myself.
Oh, this is so great. This is so great. What is a franchise? Let's start with that.
Yeah, that is such a good question. You know, a lot of people don't realize the difference between a franchise and a chain of, stores. A franchise is a business that is a brand that's established and has a founder that originally founded the brand, and they bring other people in to help grow the brand. And so in different local markets, you can become a franchisee of the brand and pay royalties back to the company. The royalties are for getting support for, what you're doing as a business owner. You pay into a marketing fund, so you get help with your marketing, and you get to be a part of a network of other franchisees. So I like to use an example of
Yes.
Starbucks is not a franchise and Tim Hortons is a franchise. And that's because, Starbucks doesn't have its local owners, whereas Tim Hortons is local franchisees. So when you're supporting a company that is a franchise, you're supporting local owners.
Okay, so there's local owners, but the benefit is they get the brand recognition because you've got a bunch of local owners all using the same consistent brand, which helps create more awareness, I would assume, and hopefully drives more revenue.
Yeah, well, the brand awareness is definitely one piece of it, but the network of fellow business owners running the exact same business as you that you can tap into and get help from is and also a great advantage to being a franchisee. And in some cases, if the brand is a newer brand, in a more emerging stage, you get the benefit of more options for different open territories to acquire and build those out yourself. So there's kind of a range of stages. So brand might be an important component depending on the company.
Right.
But there's just so many benefits to having that network and having that support from the franchisor because they know what they're doing.
Could you imagine being a new business owner and knowing exactly who to go to ask questions?
Yeah.
And they've got cookie cutter answers.
Exactly.
Here's what you need to do.
Like, how do I get customers in the door? How do I, even the initial part, like, how do I decide what type of location to be in? The franchisor helps with all these different components so that when you start on opening day, you've done all the things you need to do and you're ready to go.
Now, there's a cost to that. So you talked about royalties. Do you have to pay a price to start the franchise location?
Yeah. So when you invest in a franchise, there's a franchise fee. And that ranges between, I don't know, about $30,000 and maybe $80,000. And then you invest, the cost to get the business up and running is also part of it. So if it's a brick and mortar franchise company, there might be leasing, there might be renovations that need to happen, branding. If it's a service business, it's a lower investment typically, but there will still be a franchise fee. And that really covers the costs to get up and running initially. So it often will cover things like, your training, to get trained by the franchisor on how you're going to operate the business. And then your initial marketing, maybe your grand opening costs. And then, so the royalties are your ongoing investment to get that support from the franchisor.
Now, I assume that the more well-known the brand or the franchise, the brand, I guess, is, the more expensive it might be to get in versus a startup, or is that a myth?
I would say that's a little bit of a myth. The royalties it might affect, but there's a lot of advantages to getting into an emerging brand. And one thing for people to think about if they're thinking of investing in a franchise and becoming a business owner is how entrepreneurial are you? If you're really entrepreneurial, there's a lot of really interesting and successful early stage brands out there that are franchising, really interesting concepts that you can get involved with. Versus if you invest in a brand as a franchisee that has 300 or 400 units, then you're going to be very much just following systems. And, so you're still a business owner, but you're less entrepreneurial. So I just like to point out that there's advantages to both. A lot of people like that early stage because, again, access to different open territories and, just getting to be part of really shaping the way the brand is. And access to the founder. That's a fun thing for people as well. To have the ear of the founder in the early stages. Now,
if you're really entrepreneurial, does it make sense to maybe start your own company versus a franchise? And when would that come into play?
Yeah, it's a great question. It really comes down to whether you want to step in and have a lot of things done for you. So yes, if you're really entrepreneurial, you probably would rather start your own business and go through the ups and downs. Although, again, I would say, I have seen people that are quite entrepreneurial be in those early stage, like first franchisee. Like imagine, you've started a brand and we work with everybody from, Spanish immersion daycare to a cat hotel. And can you imagine, I've got this cat hotel and now I'm trying to figure out someone else that wants to come in and be a part of this. And so you have to find somebody that's very ready to take on more risk, wants to help you figure things out along the way. There's no operations manual really, figured out yet. So even if you
can be part of the growth stage if you find that really new up-and-coming franchise.
Yeah, that you believe in. And there's still lots of vetting that needs to happen. But when you get in there, we always like to help people understand you'll probably get bored a little earlier than someone else. And at that point, then there's always the opportunity to sell the business. I mean, it's an investment. Franchising is an investment. So
you can sell it.
Yeah.
So where do people go to find out more information?
I highly recommend people check out the Canadian Franchise Association, which is the authority on franchising in Canada. And on that website, you can actually find a directory of franchises that are available to invest in and do a lot of research. They have great educational tools on the website as well. So Canadian Franchise Association.
This is so much information to take in. Angela, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you. This is fun.
Up next, learn how the power of compounding can make you a millionaire. Welcome back. Thanks for your emails and social media messages. We love hearing from you. Today's question is from Francisco. Dear Sybil, my parents keep telling me I need to start investing now because the power of compounding will benefit me. I don't really understand what that means. Can you explain? Much appreciated, Francisco. Well, Francisco, compounding simply means that you make money on the money you made on your original investment. Think of the winter time when you've got lots of snow on your front lawn and you're gonna make a snowman. You start with a small little ball and then you roll it and the ball gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That's what compounding is when it comes to your money. If you invested $100 and earned a 10% rate of return, at the end of 1 year, you'd have $110. Guess what? The second year, you're gonna earn 10% on the $110, which is $11 added on, bringing it up to $121. And this continues to go on over time. The longer you have, the faster it will grow and the bigger it will get. There's a simple rule of 72 that can help you do some quick calculations in your head. How the rule works is you take the rate of return multiplied by the number of years to equal 72, and that's when your money will double. So if you earn 10% on your money times 7.2 years, 10 times 7.2 equals 72, your money will double. Now let me tell you how you can earn $1 million over time with this strategy. If you invest $500 a month at a 6% rate of return for 40 years, you'll have close to $1 million at the end of the day. If you don't have that much time, cut it back to 20 years, you'll only have $236,000. So you can see how the longer time horizon you have, the bigger it will get. If you manage to earn 8%, you'd have almost $2 million. Hopefully this helps explain what the power of compounding is all about. And that wraps up this edition of The Wealthy Life, helping you make smart financial decisions. Join the Wealthy Life Club and you'll get access to everything you need to live your version of the wealthy life.